really, congratulations on Canatech. It was, from everything I could see, it looked amazing. I wish I was there.
Yeah, it was an incredible moment, I think, in cannabis history, where all those minds came together in an environment that, you know, encouraged everyone just to make deals and turn this industry into something significant. I think it was a point in time that will be remembered.
How much growth have you experienced with Canatech in just the first 3 years?
This is our third year at Canatech. The first year was a 100-person meetup event in Tel Aviv that we attended. We then subsequently acquired the brand and have had 2 successful international events. The first one in 2016, about 400 attendees, and this year with 920 attendees. And we're definitely going to cap it at 1,000. We don't want to grow too big. Its goal is to have the most advanced conversation in the world around cannabis and medicinal cannabis in particular. And you can't do that when you have a 20,000 person show like the one in Las Vegas. So it's a little different, and it really is to drive the regulatory environment and the industry forward at the highest level to create a sustainable industry globally.
Absolutely, and admirable and necessary, which is one of the questions, and we might as well jump to that in terms of international regulation and compliance rules, and you know, just being able to have that conversation on a global level. How far away do you think the industry is from seeing that happen?
It's close. I think we're at a tipping point for the industry globally. Countries that are coming online have recognized that it's easier to import standardized medicine and regulatory systems from other countries that have been doing it longer and accelerate their local systems by import rather than establishing the whole chain in those countries. Those chains will be established over time anyway, but in order to get medicine in the hands of patients quicker, it's going to be a quicker pathway to import based on standards that are working in other countries. So obviously Israel is leading that globally with its regulatory environment, its research environment, its heavy ag tech and high tech ecosystems that are well developed in Israel. And countries all over the world are looking towards the Israel model as repeatable in their countries and accelerating their local cannabis programs. So we look towards that.
Well, forgive me for a second. I'm just going to ask a U.S.-based question because, as you know, we're still we're going state by state in terms of legalization. But for us, in terms of industry, the recreational use of, cannabis is far more sensationalized. It's far more visible. There's not really a conversation going on. Even if Big Pharma is involved, they don't do it because research is not legalized. So how do you think, when you talk about a replicable methodology, what is it going to take for the United States to kind of reverse that focus?
The focus will continue in 2 different markets. There will be a legitimate recreational market on one hand and a legitimate pharmaceutical market on the other hand. The pharmaceutical market is targeting specific indications with specific strains. It's not going to be smoke a joint, come back and tell me how it was. It's pharmacy, it's pharmaceuticals. The fact that the big pharma aren't there yet, it doesn't mean they're not looking. This is a serious disruptor to medicine as we know it now. And we've seen studies out of Israel, for example, that cannabis patients are reducing their dependence on not just opioids, but prescription medications by about 40%. So there's a huge impact on the medical side. Recreation, I leave to the recreational experts. Everyone should have the ability to access and do what they want on a personal level. It's very, very far from medicine, what's going on in the US. And being recreational focused means you're not actually concentrating on the right area. The right area is medical. That's what's going to sustain it for a long future. Growing cannabis is a race to the bottom. It's going to be commoditized by other countries like Colombia and Jamaica, who grow cannabis much easier than in places like Colorado, where it's freezing cold. It doesn't make sense. So as it commoditizes over the globe, it will affect the recreational market, but it won't reflect the pharmaceutical market so much.
And it's interesting because in terms of the life and the potential of the product, it seems like to monetize it, the medical industry would be the one that is concentrating the most. I mean, it was known for a long time that the major tobacco industries were looking at the recreational aspects long before it was legalized. And, you know, after they once stopped lobbying against it, and they realized that they could make money. So that's what's interesting to me, if it's such a disruptor that they're not talking about it, and that you have some insight into that, or if they're really just waiting for you, for Israel to find out how we can get people off our opioid plague here, and then they can monetize that. It's so interesting here.
It's much broader than the opioid crisis in general, and all these companies, big pharma, big tobacco, they're looking at this industry. They understand they've sold a bad product very well, but it's a bad product at its core, and they're looking to become wellness companies and change their image. And they also have a lot of capital behind them, so they can afford to wait and sit on the sidelines and see how it develops, see where it develops to, and then make smart acquisitions in 1 to 2 years' time.
Okay, so thank you. That's a perfect answer. I mean, that will enlighten a lot of people. But let's just talk about beyond Big Pharma. The people that come to Canatech are pioneers. I mean, obviously, and you are the right there providing the platform for them. And there are people right now, of course, all over the globe that are pioneers that are somewhat isolated because of this fragmentization. And I just wanted to ask, how is it possible that Israel is leading in this medical research when you know, the parliament just decriminalized recreational use, but it's still illegal to grow? And so how do you reconcile that?
So I think medicalization happens in an environment where you don't have a recreational base. So while it's decriminalized yet still illegal, we're focused on medicine. We're not focused on what's happening outside. In the medical cannabis space in Israel, the patients receive about 10 tons of medical product at the end of the day. The recreational market in Israel uses about 60 tons. It's thriving, it's open, it's happening. It's not commercialized, it's not taxed, it is criminalized, but our focus again comes back to the medicine. The long-term growth potential in this industry, in my opinion, is the medical market. If you look at Germany as an example, who have now put into place some form of legislation, they have required that the insurance companies cover the cost of cannabis medicine. That is all leading towards a medicalized market, a pharmaceutical-like market, what we call cannaceuticals. They're pharmaceuticals made from cannabinoids. That's the future, in our opinion. That's where we're striving to be. We also recognize at the same time the cultural influence of what's going on with cannabis, the social influence of the news of cannabis, and the remarkable discoveries that are happening. On the flip side, we know there are some bad things happening with cannabis. There's a lot of good, and there's a lot more good than bad, but you have to look at the whole picture and understand what's going on. We've lived through an era of bad regulation where the war on drugs caused way more war and terror than was necessary. And that all has to change. We need a complete change in perception on cannabis, and it's not there yet. When an institution in the United States cannot conduct marijuana research currently because the only place they can get it from is Ole Miss, who have the license to grow, and they don't grow good product, then you're not striving for a medical market in the US. You're striving for a legal access to plant market. So it's lettuce. Let people grow lettuce, let people sell lettuce. You don't make medicine from lettuce.
And it's interesting, you know, there's so much emphasis on legalization, but really what you're talking about is legitimization and the, you know, the altruistic medicinal potential is a much different mindset. And in the United States, and I don't, I can't speak to the rest of the world, but it's so regulated with the Federal Drug Administration, and it's very politicized. And that's why I'm saying Israel and other places like Germany, places where there is going to be medical, I would say, disruptive and credible and miracles, basically medical miracles that were available all the time. I think you guys, it's huge. Let's just say it is definitely on your shoulders because we seem to be a long way from there. But at the same time, I think you're offering encouragement and hope and this platform that says, yes, we emphasize that, and that's why we wanted to talk to you. Now, for us, for CTech, we're concentrating on technology. And the reason we're doing that is not only because it allows us to legitimize the actual webinars, but we also feel that it brings in a broader audience. People that maybe, technology is such a broad term, that it brings in an audience that maybe would not even be thinking about, medicinal cannabis. So my question to you is, when you were at Canatech this year, or even in your vast experience, your knowledge of dealing with, all innovators around the world, what was the most exciting technology you saw for medicinal use?
It plays at Canatech to both the recreational. There was an amazing piece of technology which is a home grow unit, fully enclosed, fully controlled growth cycle for one plant. That's cool technology, the technology behind the sensoring, the application on your phone. That's very cool. As a tech guy myself, I'm interested in the technology that drives the cannabis industry. So that for a recreational play, yet it's a device, was very, very interesting. The seed to sale, the core technologies that are coming out that allow the operation of cannabis businesses, that's where I really like to see technology. So algorithms that take the sensor environment of a grow and can optimize it to give you better results. Gene therapies on the seeds to make plants flower more than once. These are the technologies that really excite us at Canatech, and things that then we go and actively participate, either investing in or bringing them to light, to show them to the world and show how these technologies can really advance cannabis, both on the ag side and the recreational home side and the medicine side. On the medicine side, we released a product at Canatech called ICAN Sleep. Not released the product, we released the company. The company is a joint venture with partners we have in Jerusalem that have developed a technology to trap cannabinoids and make them soluble. So now we can get APIs, which is what the pharmaceutical industry requires for medicine. These are advanced pharmaceutical ingredients. They're repeatable, standardizable. They're the same every time. We can then put them into a range of medical devices that are very common in the pharmaceutical world. You take an inhaler, you know how to use it. We're going to apply that using cannabis medicine. So that was an extremely strong moment for us at Canatech and for the technology itself.
And again, that product is ICAN Sleep.
That's a product called ICAN Sleep. The company is CI Therapeutics, and we'll be bringing to light a range of what we call cannaceuticals. These are pharmaceuticals made with cannabis ingredients. The cannabis ingredients are manufactured in GMP standardized facilities. That's what the pharmaceutical industry strives for in medicine, and that's what we're striving for in cannabis medicine.
Which I think is accomplishable, especially when you're looking at that kind of replicability for a product. So I'm also thinking about, in terms of medicinal use, the juxtaposition right now, everybody thinks, well, you smoke a joint and that's what the medicinal use is, because that's all that's actually available, even in a limited, area of recreational use. But inhalers, I saw a lot of, I've just been seeing a lot of information on that, a lot of press releases, and also then I saw Teva, one of the big pharma companies, had partnered on an inhaler, which I think is kind of takes it to another step.
Yes, indeed. That was a deal done with Teva and an Israeli device manufacturer called Psyche, S-Y-Q-E. And Psyche was actually funded by Philip Morris, which is a big tobacco company. So when you say, you know, tobacco and pharma aren't getting in, this proves that tobacco and pharma are right inside already.
That's quite a that definitely justifies not only my ignorance, but it justifies the fact that I kept wondering why this wasn't happening, why there wasn't this marriage, because it seems so obvious that there's so much potential. You just answered it. It's under the radar.
It's right there. Yeah.
Now, yeah, especially it's not, you know, everything in for us in the United States, political and moralization, everything is connected to media here. And so that conversation, that dialogue is not happening in mainstream media yet. But it doesn't mean that it's not happening in terms of actual, like you're saying, these types of mergers and experimentation outside the United States. So if Israel is leading, who would you say, what country is second in terms of medicinal research and potential?
So you've got strong centers of research in Spain. Dr. Manuel Guzman has done some amazing research in his lab. You've got labs in the Czech Republic. Czech Republic's very advanced in their hemp-based industries, both for textiles and for medicine. Canada, up till the announcement of legalization, was heading towards medical, but now they're going to refocus, much like California did, and focus on the wrong market. I believe Australia is the next biggest market. Australia and Germany, they're the ones that are medicalizing along the lines of Israel. More than likely, smoked product won't be available. In other words, flour won't be the driver in those industries. And wherever flour isn't the driver, then that's kind of where we want to play, because pharma will be the driver. So that's what we're after.
So if we look at this, you look at how exponentially the growth is happening as this becomes more legitimate, and it's inevitable that besides a very practical use like this first ICAN sleep product, which could definitely come onto the market, I would think, then relatively soon. Am I correct in that? Would it be relatively soon? It would be,
yeah, we've begun formulation. We start our clinical trial very shortly. It could be in the hands of patients within 12 months, which is unique for pharmaceutical products. You're talking a 7 to 10-year pipeline, typically with millions of dollars invested. With the regulatory environment and the fact that Israel is pretty capital efficient in clinical trials, many pharma companies do clinical trials in Israel. For that reason, you really can accelerate this whole industry by looking at global partners. And that's what we try and do. We try and form joint ventures and find the next generation of cannabis technology and use Canatech to showcase that to the world.
Well, that's really exciting. I mean, you think about that transparency and also the level of communication and cooperation you have at a governmental level. We can't even work within, our government officials can't even work with each other. So, but that said, how quickly that's moving forward, that exponential speed. So where do you think in terms of not just Canatech, because obviously I understand what you're saying, you want to contain the growth, but if you look at the ICAN technology, what do you think you will be with medicinal cannabis development in 10 years?
Will be a standard range of therapies recognized for conditions. If you're really asking me where cannabis medicine is going to be in 10 years, not ICAN, cannabis medicine will be very individualized down to your genetics matched to the plant's genetics. That's going to be the future. There's so much complexity in the cannabis plant, you know, with hundreds of different compounds all interacting differently with each other, There's some other way to lock that into our genomics and figure out personalized medicine with this plant. So that, I think, is where the future is going. And obviously we want to lead into that, first with wellness type products, but eventually with condition-based treatments that are better than pharmaceutical options.
One thing I've heard you say several times, I've been listening closely, is wellness. And I think that that is a key word in terms of not just marketing, but that idea that we were talking about, expanding the mindset about the legitimization of medicinal uses. That wellness aspect is well accepted around the world. I mean, you know, preventative medicines and less big pharma. People are, especially millennials, are going away from that. So when you are, you know, obviously dealing with all these different pioneers around the world, are most are focused, are they coming from a wellness attitude? Are they coming from a service attitude? Are they coming from pharmaceutical chemistry backgrounds? I'm really interested, who do you see as a majority being attracted to this kind of pioneering industry?
From our experience, it's the pharma industry. It's you know, you've got the ag side. Obviously, big ag will come into cannabis at some stage. But for us, it's less about the process of growing an agricultural product, more about the processing and development of products from that agricultural core. There are others. California is focused on cultivation and dispensaries. It depends on the framework and environment. For us, it was very difficult because while we understand cannabis is a very good treatment for many, many conditions, because of the stigma, we can't get it into the hands of patients. As an example, if you have Crohn's disease, even though it's listed in Israel and you can get a license, you have to go through regulatory hurdles. You have to have had surgery 1 or 2 times. It's a last line therapy, not a first line therapy.
It's much like, you know, the opiates. You think of hence I've worked a lot in Afghanistan and been out there in the poppy fields, and then to where it's come now with our opioid addiction. I almost shudder to think when big pharma really gets involved, everything changes. It may become the first line, but it may not be with the purest intentions or the purest product. But that's a whole different conversation. You know, I think, you know, the idea of you saying wellness, the idea of you thinking of patients first. You obviously personally came from you're a pharmacist, correct?
Yep.
When did you, and what was the key, there's only 2 more questions, what was the key moment for you, or the key event that took you from, you know, the general mode of a pharmacist and the pharmacy industry, the pharmaceutical industry, and made you look and say, this is where I need to go. This is where the future is. There's so much potential here to help people. What was it that changed for you personally that sent you in that direction?
So my partner, Jason, suffers from chronic fatigue syndrome. And for 6 years, as his pharmacist friend, I tried to find conventional therapies that didn't end up working, and he tried a lot of lifestyle therapies that didn't end up working, and eventually we came to medical cannabis as a last line resort, and it brought him back. And for me, that was a sort of the light bulb moment. This really has something behind it, and the stigma and all of that. Very quickly, I was able to see through that and say, there's something here, we need to get involved, and that's what we did.
That's a great story, and it's personal. It brings it down to a very human level, and I think most people think, you know, you light up a joint and maybe it'll help you, maybe it won't. They're not seeing it from a pharmacist's viewpoint, from a pharmaceutical viewpoint, like you would have that ability to see the potential. Well, so for you then, this is the last question, and I think it leads right in from that personal experience. What kind of a legacy Do you see, ICAN and Canatech leaving as, we said 10 years, but, 20 years from now, we've got neural lace, we'll have artificial intelligence. What kind of legacy are you going to leave personally, Saul?
I'd like to think that we set the bar higher than anyone else, that we push the regulators to think about things they aren't thinking about, to make good regulations, to leave a sustainable industry that gives back to everyone. There was just a gas deal in Israel. They found gas offshore of the coast of Israel. And Israel is a very small country without natural resources. So that's a big find for Israel. That didn't make its way back to the Israeli citizen. They don't see an upside from it. My legacy will that everyone can benefit from this plant, both medicinally, hopefully financially, and we can really change the world. We've done a lot of bad with plastics, and we've done a lot of bad with pharma, and we can really do a lot of good with hemp and medical cannabis.
Wow, thank you. You're an altruist. You're a humanitarian, and when you have that kind of mindset and heart set, then there may be a stigma, which I didn't use that, but I think that eventually will be overcome with your dedication, your hard work, and your really humanitarian efforts to legitimize this. So thank you on a personal level, and thank you for the interview, and I really appreciate you, Saul, coming into this interview for Canatech and ICAN Technologies.
Thank you very much for hosting me.
All right, we'll talk to you again another time. Thanks.
Yeah, bye.